All right, let's jump right in. The entire tech world is buzzing right now, and it's all because of a huge announcement from OpenAI. You know, the folks behind ChatGPT. They're about to drop some incredibly powerful new features. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch, and it's got everyone asking some pretty big questions about the future of AI. And here you have it, straight from the top. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman pretty much spelled it out for us. New, seriously powerful AI is on the way. But, and here's the kicker, it's not going to be for everyone, and it's definitely not going to be free. This one statement right here is setting the stage for a massive shift in who gets to use the most advanced AI on the planet.
So here's the game plan for today. First, we're going to dig into what this pro-only power-up actually means. Then we'll talk about why this stuff is so expensive and what it could mean for the job market. From there, we'll zoom out and ask the billion-dollar question. Are we in an AI bubble? And finally, we'll look at the race to make this incredible tech just a little bit cheaper for the rest of us.
All right, let's get into our first section. What exactly is OpenAI unleashing here? And more importantly, who actually gets to play with these new toys?
Yeah, so this isn't just your run-of-the-mill update. We are talking about brand new capabilities that are so, quote, compute-intensive, they're basically pushing the limits of what this tech can do. So think about it. More complex problems, way more detailed answers, and just faster, smarter processing than we've ever seen before.
But here's the catch, and it's not just a simple paywall. What OpenAI is really doing is creating a tiered system. I mean, sure, some of these new features will just be part of the regular Pro subscription, but they're also hinting that totally new products could come with their own extra fees. So we might be looking at the beginning of like paywalls on top of paywalls for the absolute best AI.
And that, of course, brings us to the big, multi-billion-dollar question, why? Why is this new AI so ridiculously expensive to run?
You know, this slide really gets to the heart of the conflict for OpenAI. On one hand, you've got Sam Altman talking constantly about their big mission, right? To make AI accessible to everyone and drive the cost down. But then you look at today's reality, and their most powerful, game-changing features are also the most expensive ones. They're basically caught between their public mission and the cold, hard costs of running this thing.
And just to put a real number on it, this is what a ChatGPT Pro subscription costs per month right now in India. That is a serious chunk of change. It creates this really clear dividing line between, people who just use it for fun and the professionals or companies who can actually justify shelling out that kind of money for these powerful new tools.
And when you really think about it, this is also just one massive experiment. By charging so much for these top-tier features, OpenAI is basically asking its pro users to fund the answer to a huge question. What happens if we just take off all the limits? They're using that subscription money to find out what AI is truly capable of when you give it almost unlimited horsepower.
Okay, so if this new AI is so powerful that it justifies these crazy costs, that leads to a pretty logical next question, right? What can it actually do in the real world? And maybe more to the point, what does it mean for our jobs?
It's the natural next question, isn't it? We've talked about the price tag and the power, but what are the actual practical uses that could end up reshaping entire industries?
Well, Sam Altman himself has been pretty upfront about this. He predicts that two of the very first areas to see a major shakeup will be customer service, where AI can obviously handle questions way more efficiently, and even programming, where AI is getting shockingly good at writing and fixing code. And he used this really fascinating phrase to describe it: a punctuated equilibrium moment. Now, that's a term from evolutionary biology, and it basically describes these long, stable periods that are suddenly interrupted by incredibly rapid change. So what Altman is saying is that AI's impact on jobs won't be this slow, gradual thing over decades. Nope. He thinks it's going to be a sudden jolt, one that transforms a whole lot of jobs almost all at once.
So you've got this super expensive, super fast development, and that naturally leads us to a much bigger economic question. With literally billions and billions of dollars pouring into this industry, are we just watching a massive bubble inflate?
I mean, this is the debate happening right now in boardrooms all the way from Silicon Valley to Wall Street. The hype is absolutely off the charts, but so is the memory of past tech bubbles. Like the whole dot-com crash. Is this time different?
And what's really telling is that even the biggest names in the industry don't seem to have a clear answer. You've got OpenAI's own chairman, Brett Taylor, comparing it to the dot-com era. He thinks some companies will fail, but giants will emerge. Then there's Mark Zuckerberg,
who basically admits a bubble is quite possible but says he'd rather risk that than get left behind. And even Sam Altman says investors are probably overexcited, even while he's saying AI is the most important technology we've seen in a long, long time. So nobody really knows for sure.
So if the costs are through the roof and the market might be overheated, what's the long-term solution here? How does a company like OpenAI ever plan to bring prices back down to earth and actually fulfill that mission of making AI accessible?
Well, the heart of the cost problem really boils down to this. For a long time, the entire AI industry has been incredibly dependent on one company, NVIDIA, for the super specialized computer chips that power these models. And that has created a huge bottleneck and, you guessed it, driven up costs for absolutely everyone.
So OpenAI is making a huge strategic play to break free from that dependency. The plan seems to be this. They're reportedly partnering up with another massive chip company, Broadcom, to start developing their very own custom AI chips. The whole goal is to design hardware that's built specifically for their needs, which, in theory, should be way more efficient and a heck of a lot cheaper to run.
And we're not talking about some small side project here. The reported supply deal with Broadcom is valued at a jaw-dropping $10 billion. That number alone tells you just how serious OpenAI is about this. Building their own hardware isn't just a nice idea, it's absolutely critical to their long-term strategy.
And look, this isn't just a rumor or some future plan. Broadcom's own CEO has come out and confirmed that this deal is already creating immediate and fairly substantial demand. The wheels are already turning. OpenAI is actively trying to build its way out of the very expensive corner it's backed itself into.
And all of this, it brings us right back to that one fundamental question. We can see the strategy, we can see the billions of dollars being thrown at the problem, but as AI keeps getting smarter and smarter, will it ever actually get cheaper for all of us? Or is the price of progress always going to be that the most powerful intelligence, the really good stuff, will always remain just a little bit out of reach? That's really the question at the very heart of this entire AI revolution.